Tap dance on.
Yeah.
Good morning. Keep the chairs. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. Some of you have done this with me before, a few. So apologies for things that are going to be repeated. I'm really enjoying working with Year 3 so far. They're delightful group, really fun, really good fun. Nice start back, really very enthusiastic. The curriculum, let's start with the curriculum. So the topic about this term is going to be kind of a ships and seafarers theme. I've done very successful assemblies in the past about a character called Jack Spice. Do you remember that one? You come to the assemblies where they've all been climbing about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you might see it. Well, I don't like repeating myself, but it's such a successful, they love it so much that we're going to do it again. I've changed it from Jack Spice to Cinnamon Sam's, yeah? Because I thought I've got to change something. We've got a Sam in our class, so he's going to be Cinnamon Sam. Yes, he knows about this. He does yesterday, I think. So, yeah, that's the assembly. That's beginning of October sometimes, isn't it? It's about the second week, I think. That piece of drama, if you like, lends itself to the children doing a bit of fictional writing about this character that gets put on board a boat, and various things happen to them. They have attacked by pirates, and they run out of food, and there's a mutiny, and there's all sorts of things happen. And that drives sort of a little adventure story that we write in kind of a ship's log style. So that's one of our literacy units, if you like. Another literacy unit that we're doing is about, it's a poetry unit, which is kind of a fairly general sort of structured poetry, so it would be very formulaic. This poem is set out like this, it works by this sort of repetition, looking at so it's like shape poems, for want of a better expression. We're doing a unit on stories with a familiar setting, which we've started already. Have you heard about the Lost Keys story? Has that gone home to any of you? Yeah? Well, last week we did a piece of writing about losing the keys at Tesco, and we had to climb through the bathroom window in the lab. So they're doing certain stories which are very much grounded in that genre of stories with a familiar setting, that real people, real things can happen, very plausible, believable stories. So that's the third unit. And the fourth unit will be report writing, chronological and non-chronological report writing. So writing about, for example, our trip to Nome and Weymouth in a couple of weeks, and writing non-chronological reports like what we've done already about bicycles. So you've got arranging factual information about something that they either know about already or find out about. So that's basically the blocks, the units of work that we'll be doing for literacy. They are basically this for they get accompanied, they go for a couple of weeks each. Yeah. To the teacher up there as well, isn't it? But then children up there, sometimes to feel like they get joining, watching a guitar out. Anyway, so that's the literacy. That's basically the literacy. That's the writing, if you like. The reading we'll be doing, obviously, lots of reading all the time. It's a very fundamentally important part of the curriculum. But that's organised in group reading sessions that take place every day. The children are arranged most of the time in ability-related groups, and I plan sort of work that they do with a varying amount of independence. Sometimes I'll be working very closely with the group, sometimes I'll be saying, that's a book, I'd like you to have a look at that and then have a go answering these questions. Obviously with that many children you can't be everywhere at once, but I try to give them a fair dose of me on a weekly basis, and a fair amount of time with Di, and there are some children who spend a bit more time with Mrs. Storm as well. So that's a daily event, although same on Thursdays, but it's pretty much daily event. On top of which we obviously encourage lots of reading at home, and with the colour-coded books that you're aware of, they help themselves to change as and when as appropriate with you and your help. Library books, obviously we have encouraged them to take books from the school library, and if you can go to other libraries, so much better. Our library change day is Thursday, and they have to be aware of scanning those books in and out, because obviously some of them don't belong to the school, so they need to be careful about where they all are. Lots of activities that we do which reinforce their learning of reading. They're not specifically reading activities, but the written text is everywhere in what we do. So, as writing and spelling. So a couple of you asked already about how these spelling lists work. So if I repeat myself to you, just apologies for that. I deliberately give out 4 lists on one piece of paper because the children, in my experience, don't like to be handed things that are noticeably different or easier from other groups. It's much sort of fairer and less sort of stigmatising. Everybody gets the same thing. And then the idea is that with those 4 lists, they choose which list they want to learn. And if the first list is something that they clearly can already do, then it's not something that they need to learn. And they'll say, okay, I'm quite a confident speller. I think I need to learn list 3, for example, because I'm pretty good with this 1 and 2 already. And then that will be their challenge, and they might think of list 3 as their words for the week. When I sort of do the test, which is done in hopefully quite a gentle and fun, friendly way, how it works is that we'll do a little bit of our own reading first, make sure we've all changed our books. We've got our library books out. It's that Thursday for the test anyway. They'll have their books out, and I'll say, right, let's do our spellings. Let's do list 1, and they'll all do list 1. And I'll say, okay, if you were just doing list 1 this week, that's, you can look at your library book now and carry on with list 2. And some of them will sort of think, well, and it's not drawing too much attention to who's doing what. So when I'm aware of what lists they should be trying to do. So I can then say, well done for getting your spellings right. It doesn't matter if you did 6 and got them right, or if you did 24 and got them right. So that's kind of how we work it. And I know some parents are really keen to see how they got on, because you spend time doing that with them. So I'm trying to get a little routine of Mrs. Bernard and me will have a go at marking it during the day. If you want to find out at the end of the day, or first thing on Friday morning. But certainly we'll be praising them up for doing well, and I won't really be making any big deal about it, so that it won't be something that's a way of doing spelling. It won't be anything like that at all. It's meant as a kind of just a bit of fun, really, and it's presented very much in that way. So is that English? I've done English, so reading, writing, spelling. Yeah, we got. Maths, we present maths in unit blocks as well. So we'll do 2 or 3 weeks on one particular area in maths, and that's starting at the moment with partitioning the number system, if you like, how it all works, which involves partitioning numbers into tens, units, hundreds, working out how I can see numbers for what they are and then take them apart so that I can work with them and then put them back together. So it's looking at ways of, you're saying about explaining how we've been teaching them to do addition by, let's have a look at the tens, add those together, let's look at the units, add those together, and then let's add them together again at the end. So it's quite methodical technique learning. I do think, with particularly the age they're at, going out of Key Stage 1 into Key Stage 2, there's a lot of merit for being quite formulaic and saying, okay, now we're going to have some handwriting, and we're going to do, and this is the way that I want you to do this is a method that I need you to learn. They're very receptive to that. It's very useful to give them a good grounding in, I suppose, what we thought of as it's kind of like the stuff we remember about, like what we did when we were at school, that kind of old-fashioned, I want you to set your work out really neatly in your maths books, because actually it's going to help you if you line it up nicely. So I'm going to be a bit picky about that sort of thing. We will have some activities which are much more exploratory and investigative, where the writing it down neatly part isn't so important. But I do try to make sure that there's a good balance of the two. Science, we are this term looking at properties of materials in the first block. And I try to do that in a practical, kind of investigative sort of way. So, for example, lesson last week, I gave them a mixture of, I think it was staples and sugar, no, staples, salt, and tea, I think it was. Did you hear about this one? Well, the idea was that I said, right, there's the mixture. We need to separate all those three things. So what do we know about those three things? It's different, that will help us. So it was that kind of approach. So we did a bit about magnetism, so we used a magnet to get the staples out, and we did a bit about dissolving, so we dissolved the salt in the water and tipped it through a sieve. So there was lots of kind of like learning there. It wasn't sort of like dissolving is when you know, it wasn't like that at all. It was very much more kind of practical. So this week, I'm giving them a round piece of plasticine, and I'm saying, there's your piece of plasticine, I want you to make it float. And not only do I want you to make it float, I want you to make it carry some marbles. And it'll be we're going to see who can make the most effective thing to carry marbles and plastic. So first of all, it's going to sink. So what is it about the property of plastic that makes it sink? Okay, what are we going to do to change the shape? The boat shape. Actually, if you make it look like a really good boat, it won't float very well at all. You need to make it look more like a plate. So there's lots of investigation. And then when you put the marbles on, well, if you drop them from that far into the boat, it'll just sink. So you need to put, so there's all sorts of ways of making it fair. So those fair testing type ideas are actually quite good fundamental scientific ideas, really. That we've got the same size piece of plasticine each, so that's got to be fair. And that we've got to put the marbles on carefully, so that's got to be fair. They're quite good at picking up on that, especially when I deliberately make it very unfair, deliberately sink somebody's boat, So there's ways around it. So that's a bit about science. Not only the properties of materials, we are actually, and this is a bit more difficult to do in a practical way, we're doing the Earth and space. So unfortunately, I'm unable to arrange any trips to the moon for your children. We'll be doing that in a little bit more of a learning using the internet and research. That will be a bit great. So that's science. Just that topic. Various amounts of artwork and DT work that will obviously be looking at techniques and using washes and various different ways of applying paint and paper, etc. But it will be driven by the topic, the ships and seafarers thing. We've just started, you may have seen, doing this kind of background where I use the brush over brush, and now I'm getting them to do a silhouette of a ship using tracing, and then you'll see them appear. The DT as well is going to have that theme. We're going to make ships in a bottle. Ships in a bottle. Yeah, you might think, crikey, that's a bit impressive. But that's be cheap, rather obviously, by cutting the bottle in half, it's a lemonade bottle, and then cutting a bit off and